More than 1,600 people of all ages have entered the race to become Iran's next president, but not everyone will make the cut.
Today, Iranians join us to share what issues they want candidates to address before heading to the polls on May 19th. I'm Dan Ming.
I'm Malika Bilal, and you're in the stream. Iran's Guardian Council has begun the process of vetting the long list of presidential hopefuls. They're expected to announce qualified candidates by next week. 137 women have entered the running, but historically, women and dissidents have been routinely disqualified. Among the well-known potentials are Ibrahim Raisi, an influential Shia leader close with the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the former president of Iran.
On Friday, current Iranian President Hassan Rouhani registered to run for a second term, vowing to continue his work towards freedom and economic stability. Rouhani's 2013 win was a turning point for those looking for political, economic, and social change. While he has been lauded for many measures, including the landmark 2015 nuclear deal, a number of citizens say they have yet to feel benefits from his policies.
This feeling has been amplified by economic inequality and growing unemployment in the country. Prospective candidates say they plan to pick up where they believe Rouhani has fallen short. Well, to help us talk about this, we're joined from Tehran, Iran by Setareh Sadiqi, a PhD candidate at the University of Tehran. Hamid Reza Gholamzadeh, the editor-in-chief at Mehr News Agency. Sadegh Zibakalam is the professor of political science at the University of Tehran, and here with us in Washington, D.C., Negar Mortazavi. She's an Iranian-American journalist and commentator. Well, welcome, everyone, to the stream. Let's start with a tweet. This from out of Iran, from a Bloomberg journalist of President Rouhani registering to run for a second term in the May 19th elections. You can see him walking there, the gaggle of press. Negar, he won the last election in a landslide. Is he a shoo-in?
I think people who voted for Rouhani will probably vote for him, most of them, again, for the same pretty much reasons they voted the first time. It's not ideal. A lot of people talk about how this is not the ideal candidate, this is not the ideal situation, but there's no better alternatives. That's what the Iranian elections have mostly been for people, little incremental change and reforms compared to how the status is and has been. So I think with confidence that he'll probably get the majority of the votes he had, maybe even more.
I like that you said that people are saying no better candidates. Out of a field of more than 1,600, Hamid, you're there on the ground. Is that how you feel as well? No better candidates out of 1,600 plus.
Many candidates actually registered for the presidential run, but we know that maybe less than 10 people would be vetted to truly run for the campaign, actually. I'm not like that hopeful for President Rouhani as Negar is, and I don't think that he would win a second term, as you know, he won with less than 1% from the half of the votes. So with the promises which are not made yet, he doesn't have any chance, I think, to win the same people that were voting for him.
So Hamid, we have this tweet here. I want to show it to you. Holly Dagras has been tweeting about the election, and if you see on my computer here, Malika said there were 1,600 people who registered. Here's some of the people running who have put their names forward and need to be approved. A cleric who wants to legalize opium. This is my favorite here. A 3-year-old girl, her father wanted to launch her political career. She was denied registry. But just to this point, a lot of people have registered, but there's a process, right? So not everyone will be approved to run. Professor Sadegh, I want to ask you this. How does Iran's Guardian Council decide who's eligible to run for president?
Well, obviously, there is a big debate going on at the moment in Iran. Many people are complaining that there is something wrong with our constitution and with the way we are conducting registration for the election, because many people simply register just for a fun, for a cheap publicity. And there are a lot of criticism that that someone must do something about it. But on the other hand, what can you do? Because the Constitution says that everyone is entitled to register. And then it is up to Guardian Council who would vet all these candidates. Unfortunately, during the past, the Guardian Council has shown that is not politically fair and uses political influence in order to vet the candidate. In other words, many reformist candidates, for example, would be simply disqualified.
Right. I just wanted to add that the fact that registration is open almost to anyone is part of like the democratic spirit of the Iranian revolution. But then the cut that the Guardian Council makes, like the professor is mentioning, that is so tight, is sort of the spirit of the autocratic.
And is that a transparent process?
It's not very transparent. There are people who have been in the establishment before who get disqualified. Famously, former President Rafsanjani was lastly disqualified, who was president for 2 terms in Iran, and nobody exactly knew why he was. So it's a very tight political game, and it sort of crushes that big image of a democratic registration process.
What is the stated criteria then?
I mean, you have to be an Iranian citizen. You have to have certain loyalty to the supreme leader and the constitution and things like that. So a lot of those.
It wasn't for any clear reason.
Go ahead, Satsere.
I mean, I might not be totally in favor of the process of how those who registered are. I mean, their qualification is measured. But in case of, for example, certain candidates, regardless of what their political inclination has been, there are clear criteria of whether or not we agree with. And that included like age restriction, which in the case of President or former President Rafsanjani, it was the case.
But there are much older people in the Iranian establishment with very important jobs, older than the late President
important
Rafsanjani.
Jobs, yes, but for the president, there is a age restriction.
Hamid?
There is a clear, this has not changed. Yeah, go ahead.
Some criteria are announced and some are not. The point about the age is that there might be some people with higher age, but able to run as a president. I mean, to run a country and govern a country.
But I don't think
it is a similar thing in other countries as well.
So I want to share an example, just so that we don't get too caught in the nitty-gritty of the election process. We don't want eyes to glaze over. I want to share an example. This is another tweet from the Bloomberg journalist I mentioned at the top of the show, Gulnar Montavali. Breaking, Ahmadinejad registers to stand in Iran presidential election. And of course, that is former President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad giving the peace sign there. Professor Sadegh, was this a surprise to you?
Yes, not only it was a surprise to me, it was in fact surprise to the millions of other Iranians, and they are still discussing it because he actually defied the supreme leader by registering. And everyone was shocked. Everyone was baffled. Obviously, many people said that Ahmadinejad is courageous to stand up against the supreme leader that no one dares to. But others are criticizing him that for the same reason, that why are you standing against the recommendation of the supreme leader who said it to you specifically not to register for the election, and you have defied him. So everyone has become baffled and surprised and astonished of what Ahmadinejad has done.
He's basically, some people look at him as the anti-establishment candidate right now. It's somehow even comparing him to Donald Trump. Yeah, he had the full support of the Supreme Leader, and now the Supreme Leader recommended that he doesn't run, and he's running. So like Professor Sadegh was saying, he's kind of seen as an anti-establishment from some viewpoints, but he's a man of surprise.
I found his registration, I also found his registration very surprising because of the same fact that he was advised by the leader not to register. And the advice came because he was advised because his presence or he was running for the presidential election would polarize the society. This was very surprising, but saying that he had the full support from the leader, I wouldn't say. I think one fact he has lost his popularity was that he has acted against Supreme Leader's advice a couple of times.
Not full support, and then he lost it.
This wasn't the first time he had gone against the Supreme Leader's advice, and that's one reason he lost his popularity. I don't think. I mean, this just proves how he actually did not. I mean, the Supreme Leader has supported Khatami. He has supported.
I must disagree with Negar because she is right. She is right. Ahmadinejad has lost some of the support because of defying the leader. But we mustn't forget that he has gained a lot of amount of support from other Iranians who has for the courage that he has shown.
No, I agree.
So we really don't know whether it has been for Ahmadinejad or whether it has been against him. I come across many Iranians who are saying that I hate Ahmadinejad, but they will go and vote for him because of the courageous and because he had the guts to stand up against the Supreme Leader. For this reason,
as Negar said, something that voters in the U.S. might know a little something about. Dan, you want to get the community in here?
So on this issue, on this curveball, if you will, of Ahmadinejad putting his name in and registering, we got this video comment from Nima. I want you all to take a listen, and then Negar, I'll pose it to you. So take a listen to Nima's video comment. He's in Iran.
Second term for current presidents is usually for granted. However, this term is very different. First of all, because Ahmadinejad registered for the election defying Supreme Leader, because Supreme Leader asked Ahmadinejad not to register in the election, and no one expected him to register. Second thing is that hardliner have registered several strong candidates to be able to oust Rouhani. So these two factors are really creating a challenge for Rouhani to win the election.
So Negar, incumbency can be a very powerful force for a president in an election, but people are saying this time might be different for Rouhani, that he actually faces quite a great challenge. What do you think about that?
Of course, there's challenge. It's not completely given that that's why there are elections, and it's going to be a very competitive election. But it's sort of been the pattern that you don't create, as the establishment, you don't create much hurdles on the way of a president. If he does have sort of the same popular support, which I feel like, talking to Iranians in Iran, Rouhani does, I think he will have, it won't be a piece of cake for him, but he'll probably have a good chance of winning second term, which is what most presidents did. And let's also not forget that the president or his interior ministry is in charge of running the election. So it'll be very hard to rig an election against a sitting president. That's also something important to realize.
You know, if there is a challenge, people online are saying it will be because of the economy. I want you to take a look at this headline. This is from Bloomberg. Rouhani enters Iran election race focused on his economic record. So there are some who are pointing towards a lack of reforms under the economy. With sanctions removed in 2016, we saw people expecting better economic situations. The government is pushing back against that with this graphic I have here they released not too long ago. It is a graphic dispelling the notion that inflation has risen. This black line here, this bar, this is under former President Ahmadinejad, and the administration says inflation has actually decreased. This is from as late as last year, 2016. Hamid, are you feeling the effects of lifted sanctions, and are you able to breathe a little bit easier vis-a-vis the economy?
No way, actually. No way. And it's interesting that not only the people you talk to them on the streets say that there has been nothing in the real life sense by the removal of sanctions or any results from the JCPOA. But there was also a poll released yesterday, the Iran poll actually, which said that more than 70% of people believe that the nuclear deal didn't have any effect on their economic life and economic situation. And the economy is actually number one consideration for people. The JCPOA, as President Rouhani had promised, was supposed to remove sanctions, and removal of sanctions was supposed to bring a better economy to people, something that people can feel in their real life. But that's not happened yet, because the first problem is with banking transactions and such a situation that we don't have it right now. Iran cannot transfer money easily, still under some sanctions, and President Rouhani has thrown his word back. He had promised to fix many things in 100 days. He just a few days ago, last week, he denied his words. That he said that he didn't promise to solve anything in 100 days, and he had sold JCPOA as something solving anything, including water, including
a better agree with.
I must disagree.
So
with
Sadiq wants to disagree, but Sitareh, who jumped in first, Sitareh jumped in a little bit earlier with an agreement. Let's hear her first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that I partly agree that the JCPOA did not give people what they were hoping. I mean, the economic change that was promised has not been, at least so far, felt so much by the Iranians. But I don't think, I mean, the sanctions are not a new thing. The sanctions have been imposed on Iran on various pretexts, over various excuses during all the presidents. So this has never been a new thing. So that could be solved over one term of Rouhani's presidency. But the thing that, I mean, I find President Rouhani smarter than promising people a huge change in the economic situation of Iran by only relying on the nuclear deal. He also promised to make certain changes or take certain measures, including those that would address the problem of inflation and unemployment rate. But the thing is, I'm not very, I don't see those promises fulfilled very much. And this is kind of a disappointment. But still, when looking at major cities like Tehran, looking back at the parliament election that we had last year, you will see that he still has his popularity among the citizens. But looking all throughout the country, Rouhani has a little bit seems to have lost his popularity. Not very much, but the fact that these promises have not been fulfilled very well poses a little bit of a challenge to his popularity.
So Sitareh,
I believe.
Sorry, just 1 second. Sitareh, one of the dynamics that we see in this talk about the economy is the opening up to foreign investment, which everyone thought was going to come after the Iranian nuclear deal. But then there's also this oppositional dynamic about a resistance economy, the idea that Iran should insulate itself from things like international sanctions. And I have this tweet here on my computer you can see from the Supreme Leader. He says, "My demand is reliance upon domestic products. If we can have domestic production thrive, it will lead to employment." So Professor Sadeh, I wanted to ask you this. Do you think this idea of a resistance economy, this thing that's been talked about for decades, is it sustainable for Iran?
No, it is just nice words without having any content. For example, on the one hand, hardliners criticize Rouhani and they say that after the nuclear deal, nothing changed. But then, on the other hand, they forget to say that whenever foreign Western companies wanted to come to Iran to invest, The hardliners said that no, the Westerners are coming, foreign companies are coming, they are going to colonize Iran, they are going to exploit us, and they actually prevented the true propaganda.
Do you think the foreign investment started with Rouhani's presidency?
No, obviously there was no foreign investment before Rouhani president because of the sanction. And the sanctions were not only about over the nuclear. There are other sanctions. There are sanctions over because of Iran's human rights. There are sanctions against Iran for Iran supporting terrorism. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that these sanctions are with justification.
For the last 1 year,
I'm not saying these sanctions are with justification, but they do exist.
For the last 1 year, I don't remember any week without foreign delegations in Iran. Almost every week we have had some delegations coming from different countries, Europeans, Asian countries. We have had many foreigners.
Yes, but why don't they sustain? Why don't they come and invest in Iran? Because
because of the economic sanctions, because of the sanctions on the US.
So I'm gonna jump in here with a look at what the government actually says that it's doing. So Professor, I hear where you're coming from. I hear the disagreement from Hamid, and I also hear you, Satare. I want to show this. This is the Rouhani meter. You mentioned a little bit earlier, Satare, about promises that the president had made before he was president, 74 promises in total, and of them, you click on promise progresses, and you go a little bit down to see where he is on that. In progress, attracting more foreign tourists. So, Nigar, I want to bring you in on this conversation. This is something that the administration says that it is working to do.
They have, I think they've maybe not completely succeeded, but they've definitely changed the trend and the pattern of foreigners being scared of traveling to Iran. And you see a new wave of tours from especially Western countries, from Europe and even the US, traveling to Iran. There's reinforcement from the government, from the establishment, and there's also more room for entrepreneurs in all these different industries that tourism will bring up, especially for young people in the country, that will improve the economy. It's not a big portion of the economy, of course, in a country that has oil and gas and all those things, but it's an important symbolic and cultural change that young Iranians especially have been wanting for so many years, because it's the image of Iran that had been so distorted in the West and even the international community that I feel like with these visitors, it's going to change and improve so much better.
Hamid, do you see this?
Agree with. Go
ahead, Satare.
I agree with Nagar on the fact that more tourists have been coming to Iran during Mr. Rouhani's presidency, and this is due to. Or a big part of it is due to the better image that President Rouhani in his rhetoric has given Iran on the international arena. But we should not forget that this is not because things change within Iran, but because after the deal, it seemed that the European and American companies were benefiting from the deal, so they felt that they can change this anti-Iran propaganda and start to a little bit calm it down. So Iran has always been the same. I mean, it's always been. But who made
the deal? I mean, the negotiations had been going on for many years, Satara, but by the Jalidi team and under Ahmadinejad, they never succeeded.
Yeah, I'm saying, yeah. He achieved
the hardliners negotiated for 6 years.
Okay, so that is a perfect place to pause this conversation. We will pick up that debate in our online post show. That's all the time we have for now with our guests. Just enough time for a last word from community.
All right, last word, optimistic note from Poria. He says, the election is highly competitive and every vote counts. I hope to see clear plans from the candidates and a high turnout from the people.
We'll discuss what our guests have to say about that. We'll see you online, stream.aljazeera.com. Hi, and welcome back. We are in the online post show. We're talking about Iran's upcoming elections. Let's get right back into it. We had to pause the conversation there just for a second. Sitara, you were making a point. Do you want to reiterate that point for us? Because I got everyone jumped in at that point. Go ahead.
Right. I just wanted to say, I'm not, I wanted to make it clear for Nagar and others who are watching. I'm not an anti-Rouhani. I said that, yes, President Rouhani made because of his rhetoric and the deal that he managed to achieve during his presidency, the anti-Iran propaganda declined. But what I wanted to, the point that I wanted to make was that nothing seriously changed within Iran. I mean, there was not a threat to foreign tourists coming to Iran that was removed during Rouhani's presidency, but he helped improve Iran's image to some extent. This is the point. I mean, it's just that the media changed addressing the way they addressed Iran on tourism a little bit.
So I want to bring us back to the issues in this election that people care about. We asked what the biggest issues are for Iranians, and we got this response from Tara. He says, jobs and inflation for everyone, social and cultural freedom for urban communities. So Nagar, do you think there's a class divide when it comes to what people's priorities are, jobs versus, let's say, social reform?
I think so. I mean, you can't make that a very generalization, but yes, of course, if it's from the more impoverished classes of the economy, people have a higher priority, like everywhere in the world, on jobs and employment, inflation rates, and things like that. But the more urban or young or middle-class communities also do care about employment and jobs and economy, but they also care about social freedoms, things like tourism, Iran's image in the world. If you're a student studying abroad, if you're a student trying to study abroad, if you have any kind of connection with the world, you understand how this image might affect your, cultural, social, or even economic life.
Actually, economy is number one.
Hamid first, and then Professor Hamid.
Thank you. 55% of people have said, latest survey, latest polls, that the first priority is unemployment. Then it is the income gap between the poor and rich. Then it is hard situation in life. The majority of people are thinking that the most important issue is economy and anything related to economy, which is because of the President Rouhani's performance in his first term. And I don't see anything with about 60% of people considering economy as important. I don't think there is any divide in the classes.
Sadek?
Although we concentrated a lot on the economy, we mustn't forget that Iran has a young population. We have 4 million students. And the Rouhani's presidency has actually been very positive as far as the social and political development in universities, press freedom, the freedom of student movement, etc. We mustn't forget that we had thousands of students who have been barred from education because of political reasons, and many of them have returned back to university. The correspondent, writers, journalists feel much better under Rouhani than they ever felt under Ahmadinejad and hardliners.
And I was a school student during President Khatami, and I was a university student during President Ahmadinejad's term, and now I'm a student at
but you
President
were lucky.
Rouhani's term. And
you were lucky, Setare. You were lucky.
Yeah, I have been very lucky, but I don't see that big change.
Those are just facts.
Hundreds of your colleagues were barred from continuing with their education.
We have the young population. Professor, we have the young population in universities, right? But we also have in NGOs and social activists. I have been working as an NGO activist for the last 12 years. And I can say that it has been most terrible one during President Rouhani. Many NGOs are stopping works, and there is no support for them and no consideration. You cannot see anything in President Rouhani's cabinet and programs and plans about NGOs or social activities.
Right, but Hamza, you're not in prison.
Things.
There's been a lot of crackdown, like Professor Ziba Kalam is saying, on students. There's been a very tight security situation at universities, and just the political sphere had been.
Have you been to the university?
Had been very, very repressive, especially after 2009, which then opened after the election.
Have you been at the universities?
No, but we're in touch with a lot of university students.
Okay,
for example, Zia Nabavi, who is a student leader. Right, you're not in prison, of course. Hamid Reza is not either. But for example, Zia Nabavi, who is a student
in the university.
Zia Nabavi, who's a student. Let me just finish this. Zia Nabavi, who's a student leader and still in prison since 2009.
During my bachelor degree at the University of Isfahan, and I was in contact with a lot of Ahmadinejad's opponents, and they were free to walk all along the street.
Right, but not all of them.
I mean, this is the same. I personally don't see a change between Ahmadinejad and Rouhani in giving the freedom of speech. I mean, there are restrictions.
That is not true. Hundreds of students.
Well, this is my idea as a student who has experience being active in both terms.
So I just want to bring. I want to bring somebody's comment on that issue, Satere, that you're talking about. We have this comment here from Layla online. She says, "I believe in terms of human rights, women's rights, and the rights of other minorities, Rouhani doesn't have a good score. We were still witnessing the arrest of journalists and other civil rights activists." So, Satere, would you agree with that?
I think President Rouhani hasn't addressed social problems. I mean, he was more concerned with the economy, and I don't think he has done much about the social problems that we were dealing with. But one fact is that dealing with the social problems and needs a lot of time. It cannot be done in only 4 years. So
right.
I'm not.
So do you think that will come
in
a potential second term? Is that something that you would look forward to?
Well, I don't know, but I think this is what the society would demand him to do, because he hasn't been very successful in making people happy on the economic level. So. And I think this has been a movement within Iran among women and the youth, that they have always wanted more progression and freedom within the society. And it has been, I personally feel that there has been a development, there has been a progress during all the presidents, ever since I have been, in a adult feeling that. So that's what makes me very hopeful about the future of Iran. Each president who came in power did something because he was demanded by the people to do so.
I want to.
So no matter who will win the next election, they will have to do something about, more cultural and social change and progress.
Human rights records. We heard Setare's last final word there. I want to get a roundtable on your own final words, you prognosticate, if you will, on what's to come. I'm going to pull this up on my laptop. This is a tweet from Mo Husseini. This is the timeline of the election, Iran's 2017 presidential election timeline. 26th of May is voting in the second round. Before that, of course, is the actual election day on the 19th. So we have a little ways to go, Nigar. Are you hopeful about the outcome of that, or even the lead up to it?
I think so. I just wanted to recap how we were been criticizing versus defending President Rouhani's term. I agree with a lot of the criticism, but the way we look at it is whether there's anybody else in the race who's going to do better, which I don't think there is. Probably the majority of Iranians will see the vote, but it sounds like they don't think there is. So there's all kinds of criticisms from all different factions of the political spectrum against President Rouhani. But would the second term be better than how it was, or his first term, was it better than how it was before? Definitely. And will he succeed more than the other candidates that we see in the race? I think he will.
Hamid, your final thoughts?
First, I should say that, to my expectation, Mr. Ahmadinejad will be disqualified, and President Rouhani's major rivals would be Mr. Ghalibaf, the mayor of Tehran, and Mr. Raisi, the former judicial official and now custodian of the Imam Reza Shrine in Mashhad. And with the figures and facts that show that only 40 people believe that he can win a second term, and with 40% of negative votes who for sure will not vote for him, and only 27% of popularity right now, I don't see any future for President Rouhani as a winner of second term.
Who do you think will win?
But it depends.
Curious.
But it depends on
so many things. So
Mr. Ghalibaf and Mr. Raisi are playing.
That is a total crystal ball moment right here, because of course we have no idea, but I know that the stream will check back in. We're running out of time, Hamid, so I have to cut you there because I still want to get Professor Sadegh Zibakalam, your final thoughts on what you think will happen.
I think despite the fact that many potential voters are maybe not 100% satisfied with Rouhani's performance, but they remember how the country was doing, the state of the economy, the political freedom, etc., under the hardliners during Ahmadinejad. So because of the fear of preventing hardliners becoming president again, they would go and vote for Rouhani.
We heard our guest's final thoughts. I know our community online has its own. Dan?
Yeah, so I'll wrap this up with two different perspectives on President Rouhani. We have Holly, who writes, Rouhani overpromised to the Iranian people. While he managed to secure the Iran deal, he wasn't able to deliver on civil liberties and economy. And then Saba says, concrete changes when your president speaks at the United Nations. People don't leave the room.
Thanks to our community for weighing in on this conversation. I also want to thank our guests, Sitara Sadighi, Hamid Raza Gholamzadeh, Sadegh Zibakalam, and Nigar Mortazavi for joining us. We'll be following this presidential race very closely, and we want to know what you think. So keep sharing your updates with #AJStream.